Ha ha ha. So you ready to die, mortal?
No, thank you. I'm kind of scared right now.
You gonna cry?
At least I am not looking like a purple expired noodle.
Oh, now you're in for it.
Dear viewer, today I will be inspecting and analyzing a Terraria iceberg. Before we continue, I will give you a rundown on what Terraria is. A common misconception of Terraria is that it's just 2D Minecraft, and people who say that couldn't be any dumber. Terraria is more RPG based while also having the fun sandbox element of Minecraft like building. The RPG base feels best in its progression as it makes the player want to keep playing as it is rewarding when given. Terraria has many bosses in its vanilla game, consisting of only 17 bosses that can be spawned naturally or summoned. That's not even counting the optional mini bosses that can be summoned in events like Blood Moons, and countless mods that add even more bosses and features to Terraria, like Calamity, Thorium, and Terraria Overhaul, just to name a few. Just to be sure, I'm not throwing shade onto Minecraft, I'm just saying I enjoy Terraria better than Minecraft because I just find it funner, in my opinion. So don't kill me, Minecraft stands, please. This iceberg contains the facts and in-game stuff, theories and headcanons, disproven and non-canon stuff, fan-made and opinions, and Terraria/canon information. This iceberg contains 10 layers of information, with each level becoming more obscure and unknown to the main player base. Without further ado, let's jump right into the ultimate Terraria iceberg. Terraria developers are just the people who made and helped develop Terraria, like Relogic. The tutorial world is the world that introduces newer Terraria players to its basics, such as building, mining, and etc. Terraria forums are the main base of information for most Terraria players, containing information that can help average players in many situations such as bosses and potion ingredients maybe. PewDiePie's playthrough of Terraria was one of the things that brought Terraria back into its spotlight, almost like how Felix had brought back Minecraft. The world is customizable in its world seed. Alongside with that, you can customize the world infection and the difficulty that will plague or treat you, either making the game easier or painful. Alongside changing the world's difficulty, you can raise the challenge for your player character. Making a hardcore character will delete the said character upon death, and many other variables for many other difficulties. The Terraria lore is quite complex, and I'm not going to be spending half my remaining lifetime explaining its lore, but I'll have a video sent in the description to explain it to you. Evil biomes refer to the two bad spreading biomes in the beginning of your playthrough that spreads like a virus, the Corruption and the Crimson, but in each world you can only have one, unless you have a special seed for that. References to other medias refer to Terraria being placed in other games or other form of media. One of the ones I know of is Terraria and Don't Starve together, but that's only one, and there are many crossovers in the internet. Tmod Loader is the Gmod of Terraria, being able to download any mods to enhance or modify the Terraria base game. Many mods like Calamity fit into this category, as it can be found in Tmod Loader's community. Random generation is the way the Terraria's world generation makes and places items and blocks, the randomization of items in chests, the surrounding trees in your spawn location, and many more variables. Time in this game works similarly to Minecraft, having 24 minutes in a day, having the mornings be a safer time to go out, while the nighttime is when the monsters come out. Major versions of Terraria either mean the main ways people play the game, like in the PC versions and etc., or it means the game versions like 1.4 and etc. Terraria's music is looped constantly and changes between biomes, and is produced by Scott Lloyd Shelley. Enemies and bosses are the things threatening you in your journey, and sometimes you're forced to kill them to continue the game's progression. Game progression to me is one of the most strongest parts of Terraria. It makes you feel accomplished and makes you want to keep playing. Basically, it's the level of your armor and weapons, its power and defense that goes up every time you find something better. Terraria Overworld is the cancelled sequel or second game to Terraria, but at least we are given Journey's End. Old generation / 1.2 only content is mostly referring to the console versions of Terraria. Many things from 1.2 have been deleted off the face of Terraria currently. Like one thing many Terraria players think when they're reminded of 1.2 is Okram. Secret/drunk world seeds are like game modes in the Terraria base game that modifies the game difficulty, or in the world generation that isn't a world difficulty. Terraria is 2D Minecraft. This is just wrong. Roar Zero is the classical roar of many bosses in Terraria's base game. To me, the roar is mostly related to the Eye of Cthulhu, for to me, it's usually the first boss that I'd fight. The Dungeon Guardian is the price you pay if you don't fight the old man's master in your dungeon. When you go deep enough in the dungeon, you'll be punished by an instant kill skull. Cthulhu is kind of like the main bad guy throughout Terraria and its lore, as you fight his eyes, brain, and himself/his moon-esque self. The world barrier is unlike Minecraft with its massive wall that can't be bypassed. In Terraria, the world barrier is more like the edge of your screen when you reach its end, for it's only a 2D game. Events refer to the sometimes naturally spawning large-scale battles amongst enemies. This refers to blood moons, the alien invasions, and many others. Theorists believe that because when you drop the voodoo doll in lava in hell and your guide perishes as the wall of flesh is spawned, theorists think that the guide is connected to the wall of flesh as it's the guide's true form. I'm not really sure on this, I'm not a theorist, but you can look it up. Yrmer is a Terraria YouTuber who had disappeared around 4 years ago. Even though I hadn't really watched any of his videos in that time, I know that he meant a lot to the Terraria community. It's a green cap that can be found when a guy named Andrew dies. This is a reference to the main developer of Terraria, Andrew/Redigit. Minecraft and Terraria both appear to be great games that both have splash screens that recommend each other. Ivy is a special guitar that can be dropped by a steampunker named Whitney, mostly referring to some developer. The Witch Doctor is a lizard. I mean, is there anything else to explain? This refers to the Xbox 360 box art of Terraria, showing the Eye of Cthulhu about to strike the player character, looking quite outdated. And I have it. Red potion. Please, don't drink this thing if you're not in for the worthy. You will be buried under the amount of debuffs. The Empress of Light has a sound effect, I'll just play it now. In some maps, the queen bee can be spawned by lava that naturally spawned on top of the queen bee spawner, naturally spawning the queen bee. Once in a while, after listening to a duck, it will sound different. I'll just play it now.
Quack.
It's the companion cube from Portal. The Terraria tutorial world has some secrets you can find. Some of these secrets are listed in this exact iceberg. The golden shower is magical pee that deals more damage than your father's belt. This can result in you cheesing the destroyer and destroying other mobs. The Daedalus Stormbow rains arrows upon your enemies and is usually used to cheese bosses like the destroyer or any mechanical boss, just like the golden shower. The bone key is dropped from the Dungeon Guardian, which is difficult, one might say, and it's a pet of a baby skull that floats around. When you use the grappling hook, you can cancel it. It helps you with maneuvering areas one might find difficult. Luck is a hidden buff that can't be seen by the player, but is varied by the things the player does and the things around it, like gnomes. The Terrablade. It's a hard mode projectile sword that had its crafting recipe changed, which made it need a second hero sword on the PC version. Duplication glitches. Do I need to say more? When the Empress of Light gets her, sunlight, prepare for your downfall, mental anguish, and physical pain. Most of the pre-1.4 flails are now
Implemented into proper flail.
Most said flails, like my Drippler Crippler, existed in a time where the term flail didn't even exist for them. In very old Terraria versions, the sun would sometimes have glasses on them, making them pretty cool. The background of the jungle is green, instead of the mostly blue used everywhere else in the game except space, which mostly uses black. This is rather strange due to jungles not really having green looking skies in reality. It's the first ever Terraria trailer, back to a simpler time, and most of the people who played Terraria probably hasn't seen this. I didn't until looking it up, and yeah, it's kinda depressing. The first fractal. It was the first rendition of our current day Zenith. Being the final sword you would have, when used, copies of your character wielding the sword will fly out of nowhere to attack the enemy. Minecraft is 3D Terraria. Like Terraria is 2D Minecraft, this is just untrue because both games have things to bring to the table, and this argument is purely opinions. It's canon that rare zombies like the groom and bride are the parents of the angler, which in retrospect is pretty depressing for the angler. Pre-1.3 items refer to what the developers had left in the game, like developer clothing and other stuff. People believe that each Terraria world that is loaded are connected into one planet, like every person has their own personal island and that they can't go over the ocean to go to said other islands. The Zapinator was used by Terraria developers to easily dispatch mobs while they test the game. They simply forgot to delete them, so in the next update of Terraria 1.0.1, they swapped them with angel statues. In Steam, getting achievements and rewards reward you with Steam trading cards that you can spend or gain money on, like an NFT. The Torch God is a secret in-game event that occurs when the player places enough torches side by side in a secluded area of the underground. That's when the torches begin to fly at the player character and attack them. Okram is basically the last boss you're meant to fight in hard mode of Terraria 1.2 or console versions of the game, sharing very similar attack patterns to the Eye of Cthulhu, perhaps maybe some recycled coding. The Hoik. It's basically a sawtooth series of sloped blocks that can send your player character into neck-breaking speeds without any repercussions. The Terrarian Yo-Yo basically becomes God. This happens after wasting away at the Tinkerer for a prefix like Legendary. When the angler is brought to near death, he chooses to leave without being slain. Others believe that this is to be because the angler is a child, and dead kids would not look good. The angel statue has nothing to be gained nor nothing to lose. It is basically useless, even the merchant talks smack about this item. The Goblin Tinker is often giving you terrible prefixes before giving you any of the prefixes you desire. Many of the Terraria community dread this goblin, for they know that their wallets will disappear. The tutorial world contains a chest with a bomb, and it apparently has a prefix / modifier? Wait a minute, that's illegal. For an NPC, the zoologist is pretty strong, having strong knockback and damage against enemies. These are basically the Luminite tools that have been scrapped and remain unobtainable in the base game, and they would be made by, of course, Luminite. Stadia is a Google-owned gaming platform, like a dollar store Steam, owned by a big company. That isn't Steam. One of the bigger developers of Terraria informed the community that they weren't adding it for their Google account had been removed for a violation of their TOS, taking away thousands of dollars that would help fund adding Terraria into Stadia. REK stands for Rare Enemies and Kills, even though there has been no such account relating to the base game of the item REK 3000. Zenith is presumed to have an infinite range, for it only follows your cursor, and hypothetically, if you had a cursedly long enough screen, you can span the entire map. It's like an arena made out of platforms where you'd fight the Eye of Cthulhu, but it's just made out of plant boxes, for they act the same as platforms. Dungeons Defenders 2 is a 3D tower defense game that has one of the most references of Terraria in their game, adding the Dryad as a defender and many other Terraria references. The Terra Toilet, made out of one of the most important items to progress in the base game of Terraria, a broken hero sword, and using that precious item to make a toilet. I believe that the Otherworldly box plays the orchestral Terraria Otherworld music instead of the classic Terraria music, judging by its name and its difference between other boxes that are called music boxes instead of its name called Otherworldly boxes, mostly referring to Terraria Otherworld. The original name for the frozen zombie was the Eskimo zombie. They quickly renamed it to what it is now for obvious reasons. Eskimos, if any of you didn't know, are a member of indigenous people inhabiting northern Canada, Alaska, Greenland, and eastern Siberia. And by killing them, I mean, come on. Some NPCs are children, or parents, referring to a family tree of sort. Most notable of these are the Angler, as he's canonically a child and his parents are dead. It's just the old look of the boss icons of Terraria's current boss icons. In older versions of Terraria, like the 360 release of Terraria, which I have, furnaces/forges used to be more makeshift looking, having a curved look, instead of our current day furnace looking somewhat like something you'd find at a home. Skyware chests/Sky Island chests were once originally locked golden chests, only being able to be unlocked by shadow keys, making progression a bit harder. Lepus, a fat killer Easter bunny, and Turkor the Ungrateful, a already cooked turkey for Thanksgiving, are Windows Phone and Nintendo 3DS exclusive Terraria bosses, not having a place anywhere else in other bases of the game. Terraria and Don't Starve Together were one of the more mainstream collabs that Terraria had, in my opinion, including a map C that would have Don't Starve Together elements while having a Don't Starve Together boss added. The Terraria Chinese edition is basically Terraria with a new coat of paint that the Chinese allowed. For the current day, Terraria textures were considered non-family friendly because blood, gore, and etc. Some death messages were completely bugged and were stating the thing that shouldn't have happened, like when you're defeated by the Moonlord, it would say things like, Moonlord's core has been defeated. In expert mode, bosses drop goodie bags containing, well, goodies. This does not happen for the lunatic cultist, but there is a lunatic cultist treasure bag that exists in the game files. Twitter, I meant people, believe that the Dryad is racist against the golfer for being black, but in reality she just dislikes the golfer for profiting off items that terraform the world, which is completely against her religion. The statement that the old army is useless is often used because when in easier difficulties like Classic, the loot from the event is just garbage. Why? But people believe this because female NPCs, excluding the party girl and the princess, act more aggressive during blood moons, and I think you might already know why, so I'll just leave it up to you, period. Chlorophyte, it's an ore that is commonly found in the underground jungle. Like a plant, chlorophyte spreads in the soil, making it a reliable and farmable resource. It's canon that the Wall of Flesh acted as a guardian to your world, and also acted as a master and core of it. So killing it maybe wasn't the best idea. The Terraria Collector Edition was sold and distributed by Terraria partners and was available on the desktop, PS3, and Xbox 360. Inside the cartridge had basic Terraria collector items, and they were pretty cool looking. This theory is very similar to Minecraft zombie theories, having NPC or players be revived from their grave, thus explaining why zombies exist in Terraria. This alludes to the fact that many past updates in Terraria were considered the final update, people using this as a cope that Journey's End came out and that we can't have anything else. Wait, pre 1.4 Win has been used as an aesthetic for things like the bubbles from the bubble machine. Infinite lures refer to the line casted by your fishing and having an exploit where you can cast multiple lines at once, which help to spawn multiple Duke fish runs at once for farming purposes. The in-game Terrarian and Kraken yo-yos were brought to reality in a collab with a site called One Drop Yo-Yos. The Ancient Vision is a post-golem enemy that can be spawned during the Lunatic Cultist fight. It can only be spawned by a duplicate Lunatic Cultist while having a phantasmic dragon alive. It's known for having the head of what we know as Cthulhu. Upon the Uzi's introduction of Terraria 1.2, it was considered the rarest item of its time, having a 1 out of 80,000 0.00125% drop chance. When throwing a piece of soil using items like the dirt rod, it resembles a ball as it flies through the air to its destination. The bone bow is another unobtainable item with actual stats other than things like the luminite tools and the first fractal that are also unobtainable. With the right set and with the right buffs and many other variables, the Zenith has the potential to reach up to 70 million plus damage per second. It's impossible for the Nimbus Rod to have the Ruthless prefix for unknown reasons, while other weapons unlike it can. For me, this is just like maybe some buggy coding, I'm not sure. In Journey Mode, you're given a difficulty slider that can change the difficulty of the Journey Mode world, making it exploitable for exclusive items for the Expert and Master Mode items. It's basically the debate of how to pronounce the game title. Most people say, in my opinion, Ray, like R-A-Y, for Terraria, for it's based off the word terrarium, which is pronounced with a Ray sound. The holy hand grenade was at its time the largest bomb of Terraria, making a bigger blast radius than the well-known dynamite today, and the crafting for the said holy hand grenade uses 5 dynamite, and sadly the holy hand grenade is nowhere to be seen in the current day Terraria. Quotes from Terraria officials like Red Digit tell that the golfer is the brother of the zoologist, making it canon. Mismatched torches can cause a negative luck effect that can't be seen, and after some criticism this feature was wiped from the base game. Oktoberfest is a popular German tradition, and during that time, this would allow the clothier to sell items of clothing relating to it. Edge of space. It's basically if you took Terraria and shoved it into space. With having mostly negative reviews, I'm just gonna say I'll stay away from this game, and I might advise you to do the same. The Legend of Max is a fan-made Terraria webcomic that is still ongoing to this day. You can look it up with Max, with 2 X's. You can cap the entity spawn by making ducks fly in an unescapable position, making it impossible for other mobs to spawn. People believe that the origins of the ancient armor is belonging to ancient Egypt, as it is teased with pyramids in the desert biomes, and the mobs that drop it are from the desert biome. Old floating islands look like pieces of land that have been uprooted and now stay flying in the sky, instead of a cloud containing the biome. It looks simplistic, for there weren't as much resources back then than now. 11 years ago, a user by the name of Pete posted a video called Typical King Slime on Pinky's Revenge. It was a group of players fighting against a horde of massive king slimes and small annoying pinkies, which was pretty popular. Until the desktop 1.2 update, axes were used to mine planks of wood instead of pickaxes in our modern day, which actually kinda makes sense. Like with axes used to pick out planks of wood, hard crystals needed a hammer to be picked up instead of a pickaxe like today. Rocket boots used to use up your mana, but later in the future it was swapped for a specific time that the boots could be used. Most Terraria players don't know this, but our modern day shadow orbs used to be called orbs of light. It would have emitted a strange orange glow instead of our ominous purple glow today. This opinion is usually voiced when you have the zenith, practically having nothing else to progress to, other than armor. That's if you even need to progress with armor in the final nitbits of the game. This is basically game developers hinting at updates that were soon to be released, like a post from the developer Scenics where they have this message in a featured image, sitting at the bottom right of the image. This is the standard error message, which most players don't even get to see. This is referring to the concept art of the player character standing by the ocean while a big green representation of Cthulhu stands looming over him with their arms out in the ocean like a Minecraft zombie. Many believe that they will implement Cthulhu into Terraria one day, even though we already have the Moon Lord. Jeb, a very well-known Minecraft developer, states that the spawning of the Wither was inspired by Terraria's spawning/summoning boss mechanics. The Scythe, Icemorn, and Soul Scythe had been turned into unobtainable items for their copyright issues. On the mobile and console versions of the game, the sprites for the Plumber and Hero set have alternate colors, like how the Hero set was changed to purple instead of green. There was meant to be a game event relating to Chinese New Year's, but it was scrapped, so its NPCs, firecrackers, and suits that made you look like a dragon stay unimplemented. The Jungle Mimic is a spawnable enemy that when killed in Terraria 1.4, the enemy would drop very weird items, from Terra toilets and golden showers to red potions and stink potions. The concept that became the Moon Lord originated as Bring the Moon to You, alongside an alien invasion which would become the Martian invasion and the Moon Lord. They say that the moon would crash into your planet and make your world inaccessible afterwards. People believe this for the party girl teleports to the king statue instead of the queen. And back to the Blood Moon period metaphor thing, one of the NPCs that don't act irrationally during the event is the party girl. This leads people to believe that the party girl is transgender. Terraria lore wagers that the stories of old were passed down by a group labeled the Order of the Guide, which the guide you are met in the beginning of every normal playthrough is presumed to be affiliated with. This alludes to the guide having a more complex life than originally thought. This theory is kinda lame and tame, so it's basically stating that the world was meant to be equal, but you as the player surpassed that, but you can say that about anything relating to the game progression and its lore. In the Terraria lore, it is told that the Moon Lord and Cthulhu are one and the same. It's theorized that Cthulhu was hurt during a conflict, fleeing to the moon where it became Moon Lord. Many people have their own headcanons of this matter. Super Mario Bros. X is a Super Mario game developed by Redigit, who made custom levels to the modded version. The Demolitionist holds many traits to a dwarf, like being shorter than the average NPC, selling items that would usually equate to mining, and he is also referred to as a dwarf in the Terraria bestiary. Old sprites of Terraria resembled those of Final Fantasy IV characters. Players believe the fact that hard-mode skeletons in the dungeon hold a variety of weapons, and this is a sign that they were prior heroes like you/the player character. From what I gathered, this was a map created for Ymir's alternate reality game, leading to a YouTube video at the end of the map. Angel statues were used to replace items that were intended for deletion, like the Zappinator. The lunatic cultists appear blue in-game, but inside the files there is a white version of the regular blue cultist. Players speculated that the cultists would be a different color every time you'd fight them. The traveling merchant sells many items relating to Asia, making players believe that the merchant is an Asian. The Wraith have a collector's edition card that states that they are remnants of the victims of the Eater of Worlds. In an anime, I forgot what his name, had one of their characters playing Terraria on screen. Only on the Google Play version of Terraria, players can find what is called the shiny black slab, referring to a phone that can spawn an android pet. When wearing a gem robe, Tim, a skeleton NPC dressed as a wizard, is most likely to spawn and give you trades. Even though it would make him Santa Claus the Santa Claus, the Santa NPC had a fixed name and players speculated that he was originally made to have a random name attached to him, like every other NPC. The Boring Bow, it's another unimplemented weapon with no stats nor behavior, so we're just left to speculate. The toy version of Terraria's in-game weapon, the Knight's Edge, looks drastically different to its video game counterpart. Some believe that Terraria Otherworlds was cancelled to keep the sales for Terraria up. The Vertigo challenge is to play the game upside down with the gravitational effect throughout the entire playthrough. This refers to the concept art of Cthulhu where a player character— wait, haven't I done this before? In older generations of Terraria, your pets could actually deal damage, which may or may not be the inspiration for the summoner we have today. There was a planned sequel for Terraria. Not many people know much about it. It was announced in 2012, but no further information was given since then. Was this Terraria Otherworlds or was this something else? We're just left to speculate. This is referring to an unobtainable pet, which summons a drone. Pixel Piracy is a 2D game developed by Relogic, and it houses some of the items we have today in Terraria, like the Falcon Blade, pirate minions, gingerbread, a painting, and a sail. By using other hard mode completed characters, you can confidently have a pre-hard mode holo just by using things like the Contaminator. The merchant can sometimes say, "I feel an evil presence watching me," leading players to believe that the merchant can predict the Eye of Cthulhu. It's estimated that around 120 billion Terraria seeds exist. This relates to the number of input tab for seeds in Terraria which helps generate your worlds. Between 1.1 and 1.2 versions of Terraria, the bombs unleashed by the clown during the blood moon can cause major havoc, being able to explode tiles and many other player-made stuff in a considerable distance, making this simple enemy a force to be reckoned with, well, back then. The spit from hard mode corruptors would corrupt any tile it can reach, which made the corruptor a deadlier force as it was able to spread through the air by its creatures. Before the existence of Tmod Loader, Terraria mods were found through ways similar to CurseForge in Minecraft. The Corruption, Dungeon, and the Underworld would often use this eerie MP3 file in the background, which is now used in the Meteor biome today. It was most likely pulled from the biomes after being overused and was left in the Meteor biome. Super early versions of Terraria 1.3, Red's wings allowed players to phase through tiles, which was quickly exploited. In the early game trailer of Terraria, the Corruption was seen housing an orange glow in its background, before being turned into purple in its release. This was most likely used as a placeholder at that time. In our modern day, the Spelunker glow is yellow, while in the past Terraria had used this purple glow effect. They most likely turned this feature away for purple is less bright than yellow, and the whole point of the Spelunker potion is to see the ore. Vortexes, mostly found in the endgame during the climb to fight the Moonlord, is often seen around the Vortex pillar. Obviously, they resemble black holes that are very Vortex-like, the spawn out of enemies to fend against you, making players believe that Vortexes are black holes. When shooting bullets on the barriers of the map, an impact can be heard, while with rockets, it's nothing. Sometimes your bullets don't even make noises and sometimes they do. The only question here is, what is the barrier made out of? And to me, I think it's just some weird world generation. Several vanity sets are inside the Japanese exclusive version of Terraria, while not being inside their base game. Okram was deleted after 1.3, for Redigit believed it was too unengaging and generally didn't fit Terraria's style at that time. The lunatic cultists have captured the mechanic and used their skills to plan out the revival of Cthulhu by creating his organs with mechanical parts. That's why we have the mechanical bosses. The Dread Nautilus is a deadly sea creature that can spawn after you fish it out during a blood moon. It acts like a mini boss for it doesn't have a boss health bar. It is a fishable boss just like the Duke Fishron. The theory that the cultists are chanting to keep Cthulhu away have been disproven and false, because the mechanical bosses exist. I'm not sure about this, but people say that Terraria had some unnecessary texts and messages and other useless things alike for Terraria's broken code and file structure. It's canonic that the in-game bad biome, the corruption, acts like a cancer to the world and revives dead beings to attack you. The Crimson, the second option for a bad biome, is canonically a hive mind and creates hateful creatures like the face monsters, instead of turning other things to fight for them. Against their will, the mechanic was forced to create mechanical bosses. This correlates to the lunatic cultists and their doings to the mechanical monsters. The Great War of Cthulhu saw the Dryad race dismember the eyes, brain, and skull of Cthulhu, which aligns with the Eye of Cthulhu, Brain of Cthulhu, and Skeletron. The Eye of Cthulhu and Brain of Cthulhu are more apparent in their name, but Skeletron has a greater story. The old man who stands at the dungeon can have his evil released at night, seeming to have a curse on him, which spawns Skeletron. The old man was cursed, and was cursed by the cultist, further proven by him begging for you to end his curse, even though it will end in his permanent death. Terraria Special Edition was distributed by 505 Games to the Xbox One and PS4. It includes 3 stickers, the Wizard, Dryad, and Goblin Tinkerer, a sewn patch of the Wizard, and the Heroic Art card. Redigit mentioned that when Terraria Otherworld was finished, that Terraria 2 would begin production, but Terraria Otherworld was cancelled, so this leads people to speculate that Terraria 2 is in development. The golem is based off Jewish folklore, a being made out of mud and stone and protects their people. This is speculated to explain why Golem is situated in an infested lizard temple, which the lizards act like the people. The beta queen bee sprite looks more similar to the hornet sprites we have today. The truffle NPC explains that we steal their children as they are talking about the glowing mushrooms, which is kind of messed up. This is a Dryad quote. This is interesting due to the fact that the Dryad is talking about Terraria as a whole, unlike the world name, like any other quote from her. Is it sentient? I don't know. Inside the Terraria game files, a sprite of a snowman with dynamite of his head is hidden. People believe that this enemy would spawn during the Frost Legion to attack you. The NPC would have most likely detonated itself when it's nearby the player, also destroying the stuff nearby, which is kind of messed up. McMoneypants is a fancy looking NPC that couldn't be spawned in the cancelled Chinese New Year event, as most interactions with it would end up crashing the game. The Smiley Moon is a sprite that appears when Terraria Drunk World Seed is created, as it floats in the background. The heart crystals can be picked up by a metal detector, making others believe that the heart crystal contains real iron in them. I'm sure this is referring to the cease and desist that Nintendo sent to Redigit for Super Mario Bros. X. This is most likely false, but Nintendo usually cracks down on those who use their characters, and this also includes Terraria with their Super Jumpman mascot. Terrarians are always viewed from one side, similar of how you perceive Terraria's world. This is the reasoning for this theory. According to Redigit, the brother for the guide is the ninja guy stuck inside King Slime. If players managed to obtain Red's wings before the 1.3 patch update, you would be guaranteed with infinite flight and faster speeds with said wings. It's canon that the dungeon was once a thriving city, its inhabitants getting cursed to live after death, becoming mindless fighters as their brain rots out. The Severed Hand was an enemy planned for the Solar Eclipse event, having a banner that is unobtainable still in the game files. Worms 3 was a mobile game that collabed with Terraria, adding some armor sprites, and in return, Terraria added 2 pets, a gravestone sprite, and the legendary holy grenades relating to Worms 3. Redigit sometimes says things that does not make sense to the Terraria canon, to the point where players just chalk it up to Redigit having his own headcanon of Terraria. Mud used to act like sand. That's just weird. In early versions of 1.3, the Seedler, a Plantera drop, used to be fished up at any time, and the patch for this was pretty reasonable. It's a robot, so it doesn't have a gender. Paperbat GV is allegedly the first non-developer to make a Terraria Let's Play. The merchant appears to be a father due to having a painting called A Father to Someone, which depicts a person that is referred to be the merchant. This leads others to think that he is a father to someone, judging by the painting's name. People believe that the Terraria lore we know today is a red herring to distract others from the true Terraria lore. Why? On the mobile port of Terraria, crystal shards could be obtained pre-hard mode via archdemons before their deletion on 1.3. Cursed skulls used to be called burning skulls for a short period of time. The sprite used to look like a skull with a trail of fire on it before the one we know today. Hero, another important person of the Terraria community, had stated in the past that they had a fungal infection on their brain, causing memory loss. This statement has been through a rough road of controversy, so I'm unsure if this statement is true or not. Ebonstone until 1.1 was not destructible with bombs, making spawning the Eater of Worlds a bit harder. Drax, a very powerful drill, used to be obtained through the Shadow Chest before the hollowed bar recipe existed. AlphaKip, a developer of the Ancient Awakens mod, had apparently had a multiple personality disorder. I'm not entirely sure of this statement as well, I apologize. Before 1.2, two skeleton sprites were called Big Bones and Short Bones before their eventual change. The original Terraria co-owner worked on Terraria from January to September of 2011, and then left and became unassociated with the project. This one, when hovering over the information, leads to a missing imagery link, but after some research, I figured out that this was the original name for the Dread Nautilus today. In the Terraria game files, there are many unused trapped chest files that use the same tile ID. This one is 411. In the 1.4.3 update of Terraria, alongside the Deer Clops and the Don't Starve Together collaboration, there was an unused Deer Clop leg NPC, and it appeared to be the earlier version of our current Deer Clops leg. Outside the reasonable frame on the Nintendo 3DS version of Terraria, there's a Mario Fire Flower, so that's kinda cool. This piece of lore goes along the lines that things like the corruption, crimson, hollow, and many other variables of your Terraria world is designed by the land, as the land that you live is sentient and keeps the world at order/balance, where you as the player character disrupts it. The hollow is extreme purity that spreads to annihilate things like the crimson and/or corruption by wiping out all things in the world that would stand in its way, creature or land. The Dryad race basically 1v1 Cthulhu, both sides being annihilated except the Dryad race had lost as Cthulhu only barely survived by its skin, running to the dark side of the moon like a little coward, making Cthulhu into a little bit the Moon Lord. This theory believes that the pillars are tests for your mental strength, hearing ominous voices in your head, and after beating them it says that your mind goes numb. In expert mode, the traveling merchant has a very low chance of 0.001% of having 11 items to sell. The traces of this spore enemy ever existing is only in the game files as it has a banner for it, even though not having an actual enemy. Nun 2 is an enemy with sprites similar to the Wandering Eye, possibly being the previous rendition of Wandering Eyes. This is just an unused enemy sprite that looks like the projectile sent by the Flow invaders. This is basically like some creepypasta joke type of stuff, like with the whole Mario game is personalized gag. This is an unused scream sound effect similar to the Ravager sound effect in the Calamity mod. I'll play it now. In the name of this topic, it's about a very obsessed Terraria player. In 4chan, a user had posted about their Terraria world that had a history of around 3,500 characters, races/factions, financial system, and more. So one might call them dedicated, or maybe obsessed. One of the most simplistic looking mobs and functioning mobs in Terraria has over 3,000 lines of coding. This is an unused debuff that would affect the jump height of the player. With items like wings or grappling hooks to move around better, there is no wondering why this debuff wasn't used. It was just useless and kind of annoying. The Hamrush was inspired by the ongoing Terraria webcomic Legend of Max, seen as the guy gives Max a stick with a glowing mushroom on it, where Max gets the brilliant idea to add another glowing mushroom to make it a hammer shape, thus birthing the Hamrush. There are many in-game achievements that can't be unlocked in Terraria. Currently for PC, we have Pumpkin Smasher, Independence, Behind the Mask, and Hex Education. All old generation achievements are also technically unobtainable. This is an unimplemented item and sprite, alongside a sprite of a phasic warp that's supposed to go along with the unimplemented item. Nyarthitis, whatever you pronounce it, is a Lovecraftian outer god. They gain followers for said followers to lose their awareness, similar to how the corruption blinds and controls several creatures in its land, leading others to believe that Nyarthaitis is the corruption. This one is significantly in depth, having a massive storyline. Even the website says it, and he doesn't even get into it because it's probably that big. You can do your own research on it, because I won't add like an extra 30 minutes on this video. This theory is the belief that Terraria had started out as a Super Mario Bros. Mod, but was forced to change due to some copyright issues. Before the now "you were slain" death text, it used to be "your player name was slain," which I don't really understand the change. From the day 1 release until 1.0.0, the Eye of Cthulhu used to drop heart crystals. Until update 1.0.6, the bone serpents in hell used to drop flame lashes before you could even open the shadow chests to earn them. In older versions of Terraria, instead of hell-filled chests and vases, we would be greeted with normal pots and normal heart crystals like any other cave, while being in hell. There were several sprites of hornets looking more like the real-life mantid flies in shape. This was thought to be an unimplemented version of the hornets that were originally going to be a mantid fly. Locked chests used to have an opening sprite animation, but was unimplemented for obvious reasons, like the chests being locked. Yeah. In Terraria's pre-release, many sprites were only made for its time, looking very outdated and not really fitting the vibe of current day Terraria. Restoration potions used to be colored a healthy green rather than the pink/purple we have today. A 1.1 pre-release video of Terraria would show hollow seeds being dropped from demon altars, which is kind of bizarre in current day Terraria. These are 2 unobtainable trap chests hidden among the game files, and they would give very weird effects to the player, like removing all vanity and freezing the player still, and there's many more. In the game files, there are remnants of what is meant to be the beach grass, for many biomes in Terraria have their own grass texture to coexist in the selected biome. These are Empress of Light projectiles that would split into 2 when projected, but was never used. This probably would have made the Empress of Light boss battle a lot harder than it already is. There are 5 unused bestiary filters: Oasis, Blizzard, Hard Mode, Slime Rain, and Item Spawn, which would have been pretty cool to see what it could have been. Maybe there could have been more options except for in-game events, judging by the Slime Rain, which is somewhat an in-game event. Terraria in its past had its beta version leaked to the public. Naturally, this infuriated its creators. I'm quite unsure about this information, but there's apparently a playable version of that Terraria leak somewhere out there. This is an unused enemy that was most likely used to test the Old One's Army event. This is an image of colored static, likely used for debugging purposes. I'm not sure for what, I'm not really a technician in this type of stuff. Screen shake during tense moments of impending doom approaching seems to fade in and out at a constant rate, like your heart is racing at the moment. Some speculate the whereabouts of Ymir after his disappearance from the face of the internet. Some believe that he had died, others believe that he was burnt out from the internet. Nobody is certain ever since the disappearance of Ymir 3 years ago. Worlds that use secret seeds are generated using different random seeds. That means the actual seeds for those worlds are most likely impossible to regenerate. The Vulcan Repeater, an Okram drop, had a special Vulcan arrow that would automatically shoot given any ammo. The arrow would explode and impact like the Hellfire arrows today. This would not only damage enemies, but it would damage players as well. This would lead to many players being killed by their own friends that are using the Vulcan Repeater. At least in theory, any item can be unobtainable in a Terraria world if that mentioned world is generated in a certain way. So if this is true, there's possibly a world seed where no dirt exists. Maybe I'm wrong, I'm just taking the text from the Iceberg site and I'm twisting it into my own words. Remember the 120 billion different seeds? Hypothetically, that means there's an albeit super small chance that one of these hard-coded special seeds are gotten randomly. These may be hard-coded to not happen since they are special seeds, but can technically happen due to their complete randomness. The sprite of the skeleton had not changed often, but when it did, it was rather odd. Originally, the skeleton had no cover-up for its torso, exposing its ribs and many other bones while looking skinnier. There's also a sprite of a one-legged skeleton in a red robe with a golden zipper or inside area. In 2013, Relogic hired a new spriter, Aaron C141, and there was a sprite that he developed that spoiled Whatever that refers, 1.2 items and never made the final cut, which sounds pretty suspicious and we probably will never find out what it was. This is a string of unused text, believed for a scrapped event. There is an unused deadly sphere form in the game files, most likely an enemy of sort, only judging by the deadly part of the name. This entire bit is all theories. Since there's only 3, I will read out the entire text description in length. Terraria releases the spirits of light and dark after the Wall of Flesh is defeated, but does not state the Wall of Flesh directly, stating that the world had a guardian, implying that there were other guardians in other worlds that could contain the spirits in other worlds. That was a long sentence, Jesus. The theory states that all current paintings in the Terraria base game combine into one great massive painting, although nobody's ever found the combination. That's if there even is one. The writer for this Iceberg is a bit unsure for what this can allude to, but a commenter believes that this was probably just a shitpost. I'm not gonna sugarcoat this, I'm just gonna say it outright. This is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed, and yeah, have a good one.